Now, operations were year-round. They worked 10 hours a day. They worked 6 days a week. No work, no pay. So if a big heavy snowfall, nobody works, nobody gets paid. You get injured on the job, you can't work, or you're sick, no pay. Sounds pretty harsh, doesn't it? In a way. But everybody loved Colonel Townsend. He also got them a $1,000 life insurance policy. And although $1,000 doesn't sound like much, in the early 1900s, that was a lot of money. I can remember reading about a big lawsuit against Colonel Townsend for $300. And just to prove that they worked in the snow, here's 3 shades at Elkmont in the snow. Now, some of the trees were very large. And here we see Jim Shelton's family again, his 3 daughters, his wife, and his son inside a hollow chestnut tree. You can see that's a pretty big tree. It was not cut down for lumber because it was hollow. It wasn't any good for that. But it was cut down eventually and used to shore up the railroad. And we'll see pictures of that. But you can also see some of the stumps were very big. Now keep in mind, these trees are all cut down by hand, by cross-cut saws. That's a poplar stump, by the way. And this crew is also working on a poplar tree. Normally, it's just a crew of 3. There's 2 on the saw and 1 who's created this notch that you see right here. Notice the young boy. A lot of child people working for the lumber company. There's a story of a young boy that was killed. He was standing too close to a jack when they had jacked up one of the cars, log cars, and he was standing too close and it slipped and the handle came up and caught him right under the chin. Gone in an instant. Okay, once we get the trees cut down, we have to get them off the mountain. And initially, the way they used to do it was called ball hooting. And ball hooting actually means we're just going to let that log slide down the mountain. This video will give you some idea of what ball hooting, well there we go. Now this is some kind of a Japanese religious ceremony. But that's basically what ball hooting is. Only those guys didn't ride the logs. And they didn't put ropes on them. But they did leave scars. And I think as you get onto the Blue Ridge Parkway over by Lefty, I think one of the first rest stops is called Ball Hooting Scars. Although I've never seen them. Maybe I've been there the wrong time of year, I don't know. But those are the scars that were left. So what else did they use? They had what they called log slides. A lot of people called them skid roads. And basically, this was a trough, no water, it was just greased lumber. And the horse team is used to get the logs started. And when the horses go down into that dip, it causes the connection between them and the log to disconnect, and the log shoots on down. Kind of expensive to put that together, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, they also had mule horse or oxen teams, and this worked pretty well on flat ground. Not so good with if there's any hills involved, and we got a lot of hills here. They also had steam donkey ground skidders, and basically what that is ball hooting with a cable. That machine, self-powered, they'd run a cable out and then use the steam to pull it back and then pull the log along with it. So basically, ball hooting with a cable. So finally, technology came in and the overhead skidder was invented. And this is what the overhead skidder looked like. Now this man is sitting up here is about about 32 feet off the ground, to give you some idea how big it is. And it can be moved by rail, and it can be set off on the side, and then they run cables on it, and then a trolley runs on the cable, and the logs hang from the trolley, and they can bring multiple logs down the mountain at a time, not just one. Interestingly enough, when Little River went to Elkmont, the first area they logged was up Jake's Creek. They could only get so far because they were ball hooting. And then they went up Little River, and then the overhead skidder came into being. And so they were able to do quite a bit of logging there. Then they came back up Jake's Creek and got what they couldn't get the first time. Now, once we get the logs down, we have to load them. And we have a self-driven, self-powered, steam-driven log loader. And it picks the logs up and sets them on the log car. Now notice it's got two sets of wheels. The outer wheels run on the rails that are attached to the log car itself. And the inner ones run on the section of track that lays between two log cars. So they can go from car to car, they can load logs, move to the next car, and so on. And you can see that in this picture. Here's the shay up here, and you can see they've loaded all these logs, and now it's on the last log car. Now, also look at the ground here. This is called clear cutting. And this was considered to be state-of-the-art back in those days. And we didn't know any better. Hard to believe that they did that to our park. And you can see how this trestle here is all shored up with logs. Notice the rough track over here. Now as we head back, they've got trestles to level the ground, basically. To get off the mountains, we use switchbacks. And then we come into beautiful downtown Elkmont. Here's the engine house working on a shay. Here's the main line right down the middle and the sidings where they put the log cars that are loaded and getting ready. Once they get enough of them there, the rod locomotive attaches all of them, pulls out of Elkmont, goes down Little River Gorge to the Townsend Y, and pulls into the sawmill. Now this is sawmill number 1. This is old, and you can see everything kind of looks like it's leaning a little bit to the left. And the reason for that is all they have to do is unhook the cables, and gravity rolls the log into the log pond. So the log pond is there because it's easier to move a floating log around than it is trying to move these big logs that are really, really big. And missing from this picture is the person they called the pond monkey. And the pond monkey, his job was to take the logs, the kind of log that they want, send it to the jack slip so that it goes up the jack slip and into the sawmill. When you get into the sawmill, there's a bandsaw on either side. And depending on which one is free is where the log goes. This is not Little River. This is the GHC Company filing room in Cosmopolis, Washington. But I put this in here so you can have some idea of what these saw blades look like. This guy that's sitting here doing nothing is the sawyer. His job is to keep these blades as sharp as possible. And he's this one, he's got this one over here, and look at all the blades back over here. What he would do is he sharpened the blades, and he would keep changing them out so that it's always a sharp blade when the logs come through. Some of the boards ended up being really big, as you can see this. And I can remember as a kid and my dad going down to the lumber company and buying these planks, and he would build this platform and put our trains on it at Christmas time. And now I don't think you can find those. I think everything would have to be plywood. So you can see they've got the lumber, cut boards are on these carts. The carts go out on elevated railway or tramway, whatever you want, to stack to air dry. This will give you some idea. Those piles of logs could, or pardon me, boards could be very high. And this is a view of looking from, I guess you would call it the west end of Townsend towards the sawmill. You can see the burner over here, the stack for the powerhouse there, and all these company houses here. Some of these company houses are still there in Townsend. If you go down by the river and drive along the road that goes along the river, you can see some of the company houses. This one looks a little bit different, and the reason for it looking a little bit different is that was Colonel Townsend's older brother George's house. Now George's house is still there. It has been rotated 90 degrees and moved closer to the river because of 321. This is kind of like the same view. You can see George's house right over here, and the sawmill and all was back over here in the back. Now, Colonel Townsend's house was rather large, and when he died in 1936, he had a son and a daughter. I'm not sure where the son went. I think down south into Louisiana, because there's a lot of Townsends down there, and they come back every now and then and say, hey, we're Colonel Townsend's descendants. Anyway, his daughter, Mabel, she married into the Iams family. I'm sure you've heard of the Iams, the nature center and all. And so she had no reason to want to live in that house. And Alice was in Elkmont. She lived there year-round. So nobody wanted it, so the city of Townsend took it over, made it into a community center, and then lo and behold, they discovered it was just ridden with termites, and it had to be torn down. And where that was, I don't know if anybody remembers Miss Lily's restaurant. Yes. That's where Colonel Townsend's house was.